Overhand throw Gentile's taxonomy is aimed at students 12 to 13 years of age. Motor learning involves the process and attempts of learning to acquire an idea of movement according to Gentile 1972. Taxonomy provides students with the basic understanding necessary for effective decision making. Learning is a part of taxonomy that allows a process that acquires a capacity for skilled actions. Motor performance helps with a temporary change in movement behaviour seen throughout Gentile's taxonomy. There are three main stages in which motor learning occurs: cognitive, associative, and autonomous. Cognitive stage. In this stage, the learner develops an understanding of how to develop an overall skill that will therefore be extremely difficult for someone to learn a new skill without receiving any prior knowledge, whether that knowledge is visual or verbal. Associative stage is when the learner begins to demonstrate a more refined movement through practice. And the final stage is autonomous stage. During the final stage of learning, the motor skill will therefore become mostly automatic.
As a teacher, stages 1 and 2 of the taxonomy will be able to be utilised in a classroom setting by playing a game called the Touchdown Relay. The game will incorporate skills learned throughout the first two stages of the taxonomy in a setting that students will be able to further develop their skills in a way that is promoting and instilling messages of being healthy for life.
In stage 1, the participant is instructed to throw a tennis ball from a standing position, but the thrower will not release the ball. Notice the feet are together with no emphasis on front arm movement at this stage. The participant is then asked to throw a tennis ball from a standing position. The thrower will release the ball at no particular target. The participant will then pretend to throw the ball while in the appropriate stance of a forward pass. The stance involves the opposite leg to the throwing arm in a forward position, while the other leg is back. Arm movement of the non-throwing arm should also be present in a point and pull down action. To finish stage 1, the participant will demonstrate how to throw the ball at no particular target while in the appropriate stance of a forward pass. In stage 1, coordination is one of the most important characteristics of all motor control theories, as it demonstrates how we control our body's movement to fit within a skill.
In stage 2A, the thrower is in a stationary position and goes through the correct throwing motion but will not release the ball. As you can see, we have changed from using a tennis ball to using a softer and smaller version of a gridiron ball, which will further develop the required skills. In stage 2B, the thrower is in a stationary position and goes through the correct throwing motion but will release the ball at no particular target. The thrower is again in the stationary position and aims to throw the ball with a correct overhand throw to a target. The thrower will not release the ball. The thrower starts in the correct overhand throw position and goes through the correct throwing sequence to execute a pass to a stationary target. The development from 1A to 2D is evident in this video, as we can see that the thrower is now in a side-on position, follows through with their throwing arm, and the front arm is pointing towards the target, compared to a front-on stance, no movement of the front arm, and no emphasis on following through with the throwing arm.
A suitable game to fit within sections 1 and 2 of Gentile's taxonomy in a classroom setting need to include the basic skills involved in that particular skill. A game such as this throwing relay activity, which involves forward direction overarm throwing, can fit within the learning objectives for 1A through to 2D. 1A through to 2D involves throwing to a stationary target while in a standing position. Throughout the relay game, as a teacher, manipulations can be made to fit within some other guidelines of the taxonomy, such as the changes in regulatory conditions and object manipulation. For example, introducing the proper throwing stance for an overarm throw to less successful students.
As a teacher, stages 3 and 4 of the taxonomy will be able to be utilised in a classroom setting by playing a game called Run the Gauntlet.
The thrower receives the ball from a hike and pretends to throw the ball from a stationary position to a stationary target. Notice that the hike has been incorporated to the skill and that the thrower is in a good side-on position, with their front arm high and a good follow-through. The thrower once again receives the ball from a hike and throws the ball from a stationary position and releases the ball at a stationary target. The thrower will receive the ball from the hike and then pretend to throw the ball from a moving position to a moving target. As the regulatory conditions contain motion and body transport, the movement of the thrower to get into a strong position to execute a forward pass to a moving target has been incorporated. The thrower will receive the ball from a hike and execute a forward pass from a moving position to a moving target. Notice that the movement of the thrower gets them into a position in which they will be able to execute a strong forward pass to a moving target. The thrower still incorporates basic aspects of a throw such as the forward stance position, being side on, front arm high, and good follow through with the throwing arm.
The participant will receive the hike in an underhand pass. The participant will then receive the ball and pretend to throw it at a stationary target, in this case the numbers displayed on the wall. Notice how the participant incorporates the visual stimuli of the numbers on the wall in unity with the skill. The participant will then receive the hike and front arm throw the ball left, middle or right towards the wall at the aim numbers displayed. In the next part of stage 4, the player will respond to an auditory stimuli but does not release the ball at any aim target. Notice how the participant therefore responds to an auditory stimuli and throws the ball at the aim targets of numbers 1, 2 or 3.
In 4D, the thrower will respond to an auditory stimuli and execute an overhand throw towards the appropriate stimuli.
Another game that may help with the process through this taxonomy is called Run the Gauntlet. This game involves the developmental skills represented in stage 3A to 3D, including receiving the ball in the bending down and picking up motion, as seen in the hike, throwing in a stationary position at a moving target. This game can also be manipulated by the teacher to fit within some other more complex guidelines, such as the one represented in stage 4. Throwers and runners may be given certain colour bibs and they are only able to be tagged by those in the same colour as them. This adds as a visual concept to the game as well as a previous skill-based taxonomy that the previous stages have outlined.
The overhand throw used in NFL is an example of a gross motor skill. In this instance, the muscle groups being used would be the latissimus dorsi, pectoralis major, the biceps and the triceps would all be contributing to the throw. As well as the skill being gross, we could also define it as being discrete. That is, a skill with a beginning and an end point. In this particular instance, the start point would be the release of the ball, and the end point would be when the ball reaches the required target. Throughout the taxonomy, we see that the environmental contexts are always differing. At the start of the taxonomy, the skill is very much closed, as there is little to no movement of position throughout the skill. The final stages of the taxonomy has the skill being an open skill, as either the thrower of the ball or other subjects throughout the video are moving. For example, part 3D of the taxonomy, both the thrower and the receiver were in motion, making the thrower have to judge the speed and the height in which they have to throw the ball. A large question that health professionals are faced with is why the rate for physical activity levels is so low. A possible reason for this is that people do not feel competent to have anything to do with sport or physical activity, as they simply do not know how to participate physically. The feeling of being confident in your own physical ability is determined at an early stage within the motor learning process of someone's life. If this feeling is of a negative nature, then it is quite possible that this could have detrimental effects on the motivation to participate in physical activity at a more mature stage in life. This could all possibly be resolved if motor learning is fulfilled towards the student's learning process correctly, and in a way that gives the student confidence in their own ability from an early age. Early confidence in motor ability for an individual will lead to a higher chance of participation in social and club sports of interest, as they have the necessary abilities to be able to participate with assurance within these certain sports. This gives a higher chance of that individual becoming campaigners for a healthier and more active life.